Hi, welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder. Today is July 28th, and in an effort to share some different perspectives on our ever-changing industry, I have invited Brenda Whaley, an executive producer at Brenda Whaley Productions. When I asked her what she was best known for, she made me laugh when she said her skills as a mind reader, scheduled juggler, and part-time therapist. She's been producing for over 15 years, and when she isn't tied to her computer, you can find her outside in her garden or skateboarding with her kids. Welcome, Brenda.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, when I read that, I really did laugh out loud. Mind reader, schedule juggler, and part-time therapist. I feel like that is at the very top of my job description and pretty much anybody else in our industry's job description.
Absolutely. It is everything I do all day long between producing and dealing with kids and a husband in the business.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think now probably more than ever. Um, Someone asked me, I don't know, people who like don't work in my business, how's business been for you since the pandemic hit? And I laugh and I say the same thing every time. I say, if karma were a currency, I'd be really wealthy because, all the time that I've been putting out there in the world just to kind of stay out there and stay relevant and be helpful to the community, I'm having just as many conversations, that aren't public. And it's all just, I feel like one big therapy session for everybody right now,
Yeah, and
including myself.
that seems to be happening more and more as if I wasn't already, taking care of everybody. Um it's only progressively gotten worse, but I kind of love it.
Yeah. I do think there's a business out there for someone who just wants to be a therapist for people in our business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wish I got paid for all the time I put into that.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, it just makes us more insightful, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here today. I think you and I are new to getting to know each other, but I've been enjoying the conversations we've been having. And I always like to start by kind of asking the people on the show kind of how they got their start in the business, because I feel like, no one ever raises their hand in college and says, "Ooh, I want to be a producer," or "Ooh, I want to, be an art producer." Like there's so many obscure jobs in our business that you don't really learn about until you get into some sort of either business that's close to it or advertising or something. So where did you get your start?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. So I was a product of the 80s, and I was told to go to college, get a 4-year degree, know what I wanted to do, and, basically get a job, get married, have kids, right? So I knew none of that. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I mean, I was always an artist. So when I went off to college, I floated around a lot. I did graphic design, industrial design, and went to a few different schools. I say few, it's more like 4 or 5, and just couldn't figure it out. And then finally, I ended up in Colorado as a nanny. And I thought, well, I need to find something to do. And I found a great school, the Colorado Institute of Art, which unfortunately is no longer there. But they had a lovely photography program, and I got my degree in photography and came back to Chicago, started assisting, did that for a while, did a very small amount of shooting, and I just hated being told what to do. So I had, and I was so young, and you have no control, and I didn't have the patience to wait to have my own studio or own say at all. So I kind of bounced around from assisting, and then I started retouching, and then I got bored with all that, and then I moved to California, got a job retouching headshots at a lab out there, which was super weird. And then we ended up back in Chicago. And then I was assisting again, which was even weirder because I was much older. And so I was just trying to figure it out. And then I had somebody who was like, "Hey, there's a company they're looking for a digital asset manager," and I was thought, okay, why not? And so I did that for about 6 months, and then at that studio, a producer position opened up, and they're like, "Hey, you'd be great for this. You should apply." And I did, and I swear it was like finally something felt right. It just
It clicked.
everything clicked. Yeah, I was like, "Perfect. I'm in charge. I get to control I get to control everything. I still get to be in a creative environment." It was perfect. It was perfect. So it just built from
Right.
there. Yeah.
That's awesome. So everybody knows that being a photo producer is hard work. your time isn't your own. We've already kind of touched on that a little bit. And you obviously always need to be on your A game. Probably not including COVID, because I feel like that's such a,
Right.
we'll get into talking about that in a little bit, but because it's such a different beast. But, how do you keep it all together?
I have no idea, honestly.
Yeah.
I
Is it just innate? It just kind of happens?
It does have it. No, I do know. I have a lot of support. When I went freelance, I worked at a studio for 6, 7 years, and then I went freelance after my 3rd child. So I had a slow progression to the buildup of the company. It wasn't like all of a sudden I was juggling all the productions I juggle now and having to know everything, right? So it was just a really slow build where I was able to figure out what works best, and for me, it just is a lot of schedules, a lot of lists, and now a lot of support. About 2 years ago, I realized I don't have to do everything myself. I am perfectly capable of hiring help and sharing the wealth, really. So I started hiring production assistants just to help me on productions. And then I thought, wow, I don't have to do all the crafty shopping. I don't have to do all this myself. So I just kept building from there. And then last year, one of my production assistants really, she's works with me all the time. Like, and not just in, like, oh, I have a job, I need to hire a production assistant, but just in the as an assistant. So we talk daily. She helps me. She's helping me revamp, my business structure. She helps me do all the call sheets and scheduling and stuff like that. Things that just take so much time. And your brain just can't hold on to all that information
Yeah.
when you're trying to juggle clients and agency and photographers and stylists and all that stuff. So if I didn't have her support, yeah, I would be in big trouble.
And you bring up such a great point when in the beginning part of the answer you said you didn't just start where you are today. It was a ramp up. And I remember when I had, well, I still have 3 children, but when my 3 children were younger, people would always say, "How do you do it?" And I'd be like, "Okay, well, I didn't become married and then have 3 young children all at once. Like I had one and then I had another and then I have another." And you learn to manage and you learn to juggle. But I think the key thing to what you say there is having the support and the help and the people that your go-to people, because it isn't possible, especially nowadays, to do everything that is required of all of us as just one person.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny you said that because that is exactly the analogy that I use to describe work versus the kids. I too have 3 kids, and for years, mine are really close together. They're 8, 9, and 12. So for years, everyone was like, "I don't know how you're doing it. How are you working and having 3 kids?" And I say the exact same thing. I was like, all 3 kids did not just show up on my doorstep one day. Like,
Right.
it was it was just a
Oh
slow.
my God, could you imagine? That would be
No,
awful.
it would be crazy. It was just a slow progression. But yeah, it's very true. It didn't just all land on my lap at once.
Well, let's talk about what everybody's talking about right now is obviously the pandemic and how we're producing and if we're producing and what resources are we using and how has it been going. My first question about that for you is, when did things start to open up for you and what were your first requests?
Yeah, it's funny because it really the requests for estimates were still coming in all the way into April, which I found interesting. I mean, I know we were all kind of like, what's going on? What's happening? But they really didn't stop until then. So it was really only May, where it kind of was nothing. And then I would say towards the end of May, people were like, well, maybe we can shoot, starting at the beginning of June. So there was some inquiries. I wouldn't say I was estimating yet. I do know that people were looking for answers. So I was getting a lot of like, well, what do you think? When can we go back? And I'm like, well, I don't have those answers. I can't tell you that. I can just estimate for you. So I think really the first true estimates came probably mid July. I remember having my first day being tied back at the computer where you forget to stand up and eat.
You get to eat
Yeah,
and
go to the
like
bathroom,
shower.
any of those things. So, and then it's like 6 o'clock and you're like, oh my God, what just happened? So
Yeah.
that probably started mid July. And then, I mean, I've been working ever since. I've probably done 10 estimates from that time till now.
And
probably
have any
4,
of them gotten approved?
yeah, 4 have gone away. I think I have
Uh-huh.
1, 2, 3 floating, and we did our first shoot last week. It was a week-long food shoot. I've got a 2-day shoot next week, and then I've got a 2-day shoot at the end of August right now.
And where are these shoots? Are they all local to you in Chicago?
Yeah, everything's happening. These are our local Chicago photographers. Some of the agencies are on the East Coast, but everybody's mostly here.
And what are they all food shoots or are they varying shoots? Are they location, studio? Give us a little bit. The audience, I'm sure, is curious about like who is approving jobs and asking for estimates and what type.
Sure. So I do a lot of food photography. Actually, I do both. I do it's probably 50-50, food and lifestyle. So right now the one last week was food, the one next week is food, another one floating is food, and then the one at the end of this month is a lifestyle shoot in studio. I did have somebody ask me about a shoot that would have been studio and location mix over 3 days. I just wasn't able to do I just had too much going on. I wasn't able to attack that one, and honestly, that one felt a little more daunting with everything that's going on.
So what about the shoot that you already did? Tell us about that. Let's learn. Was that your first on set experience?
It was, and it was the best case scenario I could have prayed for. So it's a client that I shoot with 6, 7, 8 times a year. We do it, like, every couple of months, so we know everybody very well. It could be small, like, everybody was really willing to understand and listen about what we were up against and what we needed to get things going and to, just set up the process of shooting remotely, getting into the building, the health checks, all that stuff, so I think I couldn't have asked for a better first experience back. It went really smoothly, and everybody was we had one little mishap that we corrected, on set, where people forget that we're in a pandemic. And, so we had to talk that through, but I think it was great. I mean, it went over really well.
And what were your conversations like leading up to even the process of estimating? I'm assuming this was the first time the client was on set as well. So do you feel like they were educated and they knew what to expect and what you were going to need on the shoot, or were you educating them along the way?
I think it was a little bit of both. So the client is a large corporation, so they had their processes in place already. So the client themselves had already understood, what we were up against and what we would be needing. Again, we know each other all very well. They're a very supportive group to work with. So I just had to say, listen, here's what we need. Typically on this shoot, we wouldn't really need a prep day. Maybe I'd have you know, somebody come in and set up the sets or whatever, but it wouldn't really require like a full team to come in for a pre-light prep day. But I asked for it because we needed to get everybody in there, get everybody comfortable, figure out how to access the building and how long those processes were going to take. And we needed to test the remote shooting process. That probably took, 3 hours at the end of the day walking people through on how to use the software, what to look for, what to expect, how we're going to communicate, who's the point person, who's going to be waiting to do these approvals, and how are we going to reach you. So all of that took a lot of time, and it was super helpful.
Yeah, and I think that dress rehearsal is really important, even though you may have, let's say 5 shoots from now, you may have gone through that many times, but the people on the other end may not have, and they haven't gone through it with you. So, that communication tree, I think, is really important because there's so many different ways that you can view the shoot if you're remote, right? You can do we keep calling it this like doggy daycare kind of like flip on the switch, see what's going on, right? This like overview.
Mhm.
But not everybody might want their client or everyone to see what's going on at every single moment. You might want to control that, right? Then you have obviously the remote capture part where you're taking a picture and then someone's looking at it. So how do you control the communication? Because sometimes, especially if you're working with an agency and not the corporation directly, sometimes you might want to have conversations internally first and then share something with the client. and all of that, takes a little bit of time. Have you had to kind of manage that dance yet?
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest questions that was asked, prior to the shoot, last week. So, exactly that. We don't necessarily need the client to be seeing all of the shots coming through before we get to the one we wanna present as the final product. How do we keep them away from there, chiming in and slowing down the process? Not that we don't want them involved, but just like before, we just don't, there's no need. That's why we have, our creatives there to guide through the process before we show to the client. So that was a big issue, and I was working with my digital tech trying to figure out, we use Zoom, so we're trying to figure out how to navigate Zoom so that we could kind of let them see what's going on, but at the same time, not have them see everything that's coming through. Ultimately, what ended up working best for us was we just had a conversation. The agency had a conversation with the client and said, "Listen, here's how it's going to work. This will be running, and then as soon as we need you to approve something, we will ask you to turn on your microphone, communicate with us, and get it approved that way." So they were privy to everything that was happening on that particular shoot. There will be times. So there's two solutions that we possibly came up with. Sending the clients into breakout rooms where they can't really see what's going on, or just putting them in the waiting room, where their screen goes white or black. I mean, it is really your
It's such a
option.
funny visual, and we've all been there. I've sat in the waiting room, and I've been in a breakout room, and I can imagine what that's like for a
Right.
client.
It's not ideal, but I mean, I think I really the conversations are very important. They're key. Just constantly communicating with everybody so everybody's aware and understands the process and what needs to happen in order for us to hit our shot counts and get them what they're asking for.
And how did the shot counts go? Did you feel like everything took longer, or do you feel like you were still able to be pretty efficient?
We were actually very efficient, way more efficient than I thought we were going to be. But again, it was very familiar to everybody on set. It was not,
Yeah.
I was not walking into a situation where it's not a team that's already been working together all the time, and clients and agency. So it went really smooth. I didn't even have to ask. The agency came back and said, "Hey, normally we would shoot about 8 to 10 shots during that shoot during the day." They came back with 6, and I said, "Yeah, I feel great about 6 shots." And at one point, I said, we were almost done, and I'm like, "It's 2. Would you? Is there anything else you'd like to?" I mean, and they didn't need that money. They didn't need that much stuff on this particular one anyway, so it just worked out. But I'm like, "Hey, if we have a little time, is there something else that you need done?" And they didn't. So we were able to wrap a little early and upload images and all that stuff. So it worked out great. But I think
And how did social Oh, go
no,
ahead,
I was going
sorry.
to say, I just think in general, I think so far my experience with agencies has been positive. They understand. Everybody seems to be understanding that things are going to run a little slower.
What about social distancing? How did that work? Did you feel like people remembered or easily forgot, or were they really, like nervous and scared? And did people wear their masks? And was that seamless as well?
It was not seamless. We had our health and safety coordinator, on set. That is the one of the add-ons to the estimates, that I include now, and her sole job is just to walk around, or his, whoever it is, to walk around and make sure people are following rules and keeping their masks on and trying to stay at 6 feet apart. So that is really important, and it was super helpful because you do forget, especially when you're in an environment where you're very comfortable with people. Everybody kept their masks on. That wasn't an issue. We only had that one time with somebody that came in to fix a machine, and I had to ask him a couple times to please put his mask back on. But other than that, people were pretty good about it. I think the social distancing part was more difficult, only because everybody knows each other so well. Not because there wasn't room or it wasn't possible. It's just that I think people just kept forgetting, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be so close."
There's a confidence now for a lot of people that comes with wearing the mask.
Mhm.
So, and if you know the person and you're wearing the mask, you probably feel much, better about it, especially in a work situation where you've been doing this dance with them before.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, it was fine.
What about the location shoots that you're estimating? What are some of the conversations you're having there that are different than what you were having for the studio shoot?
Yeah, those are tricky. I mean, the one true, well, I estimated two location shoots. Both did not happen. I mean, how different was it? It wasn't. It almost maybe a little better. The only because you're outside, so the only these were both outside, not like location in a house or whatever. So everything was happening outside. The trickiest part was, how to deal with where people would go when they're not on set. So maybe you have a motorhome, fine, but how many people are you going to put in there? Not many.
Yeah.
You're sharing that one little bathroom unless you get extra bathrooms. But other than that, I mean, it's just this very much the same plan of attack, just trying to keep people more distant and dealing with the food situations a little trickier all around, really.
And what solutions are people coming up with for that?
For the food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to really keep it to boxed items. So last week it was a catering company and they did boxed breakfast, boxed lunch. The downside is the ridiculous amount of packaging.
Yeah.
I think we're taking huge steps backwards trying to get our sets more eco-friendly, but I just don't see a way around it right now. I know there are some catering companies that do a better job than others with their compostable items or recyclable items. It's tricky. I mean, I want people to be safe, and I think right now that just has to come above the other thing. But yeah, a lot of next week we're going to do an off menu order because we have a small crew. So we'll see how that goes.
And what about the whole social distancing thing on set, on location? Do you feel like you might have the same issues of people kind of forgetting and feeling comfortable, and you might have more people also on set, I mean on a location shoot. Do you think you'll need more than one police person
Yes.
moving
Yeah. Yeah,
forward?
for sure. No, I would think that it would be easier for people to social distance, but you're probably right. I mean, it'd probably be very similar. I mean, if everybody knows each other, you get comfortable and you all of a sudden you're standing around each other and you don't even realize it. But yes, so my kind of plan at this point is the size of the shoot dictates how many people I have focusing on that. The shoot that I'm working on that's in a studio will have talent. So I'll have a production assistant solely dedicated to food, catering, crafty, that kind of thing. So nobody's touching anything over there. I'll have another production assistant solely dedicated to talking between the groups, right? Between the stylist, between the photographer and myself and talent. And then I'll have the health and safety coordinator who will be managing all of that. So I think it just depends on the size of the shoot and then you have to dictate the amount of people accordingly.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about when you were estimating for these location jobs. Were you getting any pushback from scouts or locations or talent, people who weren't interested? Whereas we kind of were this well-oiled machine before. You knew who to call to get good locations and casting and all of that. Like, what are you up against now? Is everybody open for business?
Yeah, so I will tell you that here in Chicago, we have really great teams of people that do locations and casting and all that. So just like a lot of the producers here, they've all been working on new plans and new processes moving forward. I know the one casting agent that I use, they have a whole new process for doing remote casting sessions. They have a flow chart and how that works. They put together solutions for casting families or casting pods of people that may work together or know each other. So same with locations. Locations have set up locations that would have family members that live in the home that are also can work as talent. So you could almost, do the whole entire thing within this little sort of contained pod.
Yeah, we're doing that with Create in
Yeah.
Place, that directory that I started with the location scout, and we're finding clients are really interested in this. They're intrigued by it, but it's interesting because, my entire career choosing an artist has been based on the style and the, what they create. Now it's, primarily based on either the location or the talent that's there.
Yeah.
And then they will, look at the photographer director and be like, oh, okay, this style works. But it's primarily driven by the location and the casting first, I would say, and then location.
Yeah, for sure. And that's interesting because that is a completely different way that this business has ever run.
Yeah, I do think a lot of it can be chalked up to the fact that there are so many options and so many really great options, right? Which has changed a lot over the years. There's so much competition out there that, at least from my experiences on Create and Place, the idea is that, look at all these incredible photographers and directors I can choose from. Okay, that's a given. I know they're amazing. Now, what do they have in terms of resources for me? Let's start there.
Right. Which is wonderful because it's really giving a lot of people that maybe wouldn't have been seen before, the
Mhm.
opportunity to get out there and get seen and get their name known.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, before we wrap up, I'm really curious what you feel like clients and ad agencies, like creatives and art producers at those agencies, could be doing to better educate them in terms of this process now, or do you think they're already doing it?
Yeah, I think it's just really important that they're clear about timing and cost, I mean, our crews might be a little smaller, maybe we have one or two less people on set, or maybe we have a little less time with our talent. So some costs are going down a little bit, but you're definitely adding cost when it comes to you're now adding a health and safety person, you're adding PPE kits, you're adding, more insurance and remote shoot fees and all that stuff. So they just really need to be aware that money should not we should I don't even know how to phrase it, but I don't want them to think that because nobody's working or hasn't worked for a while that it's just one of those things where, oh well, we can say, $20,000 will do the shoot when it's actually
Right.
$50,000. Like, just be aware
Yeah.
that the costs have not changed. If anything, it's going to be a little more expensive and we're going to need a little more time.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing, is the time aspect of it, right? I think those line items that are health and safety line items are hard to dispute unless they're like completely out of control. But the idea that we aren't that well-oiled machine anymore, although we are well-oiled, it's a new machine.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more time also that has to be put into play for pre-production. And I don't just mean, oh, let's add 2 pre-pro days. Like, we're on shoots right now where my photographers are saying, okay, thank God I have nothing else going on, because I'm literally spending the whole 2 weeks before this shoot to prepare,
Hmm.
when they've never had to do that. They've spent some time here or there and they've had their producers handling everything, but they've got their, you know, hand in absolutely everything. So I think it's really important for clients to recognize that the time leading up to the shoot is going to be more. It's important for the photographers and directors to recognize that, like, they should probably up their pre-production time fees for that, because they are going to be spending a lot of time on that. And then once you get to the set, the producers, I think, it's been really helpful when our producers have provided the shot schedule for the day to show them how long the load in and load out takes, right? You've got less people doing it and you have to do it from a socially distant way. That's going to take longer. How long does it take to set up the shot now? How long can you do each shot? You've got to only bring certain talent in for a certain amount of time. And that dance that exists on set, like, literally has to be figured out ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's why adding those, like you said, adding those pre-production days is key. It's key. And those are hard to push through. I don't
They
think
are.
if you're not on the side of it, you can't truly understand the amount of time it takes to put everything together and to make it all happen seamlessly.
I agree. And I mean, you would say as well, I'm sure, that even before COVID hit, you as a producer are spending way more time on a job than the 3 prep days you put in.
Absolutely. I mean, I probably don't get paid for at least I don't know, 5 days of work for every job I do.
Yeah, no, I'm not,
Yeah.
and everybody knows that, that's not a
Yeah.
surprise, so it kind of comes with the territory, unfortunately, and add COVID to this, and I think it's really important for all of us to help kind of break that mold because it's the same thing for the photographers and directors.
Yeah.
Like they put in way more time than they get paid for and compensated for, and the same with you. And I would think that maybe some people could argue, well, you're working on multiple jobs, and it all ends up working out, and your time gets covered.
Yeah.
Possibly to some extent. However, I think now people are trying very hard not to work on multiple layered jobs because you have to give your full attention to what you're doing
Right.
to manage this. And maybe that'll change in the near future as we all kind of get better at it, but it's not worth it right now. Like, baby steps I think is really important in this education process for everyone.
I agree. I agree.
And I think one other thing I would add to that question about, what could people do to prepare now is I really think, if we think about the process in the past, I get a layout or a shot list or a deck. I share it with you. We talk about it. It's already been shown to the client and approved. So we create an estimate and we send it along. I would love if there was a way in which we could see and have conversations about that before things get presented to the client so that we can weigh in on certain things like, oh, you think this is going to take 3 days, it's actually going to take us 5, and here's why. Ooh, see this kind of location, yeah, in the past we might have been able to pull this off, but I don't think we can do this anymore, so that we're not trying, so the expectations of the clients are in line, and we're not trying to correct something that's already been sold into a client
Yeah.
after the we can provide so much added value earlier on in the process that I think will make for a smoother production. I had an art producer call it a kind of a feasibility check, and I like that. I'd like to see more of that happening.
I would too. I think that would be amazing. I would love to have some input into that because you're absolutely right. I mean, it completely change the way the production can run, and you don't, so many times we've been sort of thrown into things. You want the work, you want to do the work, you enjoy doing the work, but then you're kind of asked to do more than you probably can or should be doing, especially now. You know,
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we close, I always like to ask, what's your favorite thing to do on a Sunday? And if you weren't a producer, what would you be doing?
Oh man. Um,
Probably home at this point.
yeah, right. I don't know. I probably the first thing I would say is what is a Sunday because
Yeah.
weekends are not really a thing.
That's the best answer I've ever gotten. You're so
Yeah,
right.
right. I don't know. I do love a Sunday though. I really do. I'm a big. I get up super early, mostly because I have little kids and it's the only time I can be, in silence. But I love to just, especially when it's warm out, be outside, have a cup of coffee, and just sit in silence. But just just if I'm not working, we'll outside with the kids. We take them
Yeah.
kayaking, go hiking, biking, whatever. Just being out there and just enjoying everything.
Being disconnected, I think,
Yeah,
being away
yeah,
from my cell phone and my computer is really important. I think, you know, you say that like about, what is a Sunday? And I think, our boundaries have always been blurred, but I'm trying extra hard right now to really keep those boundaries as best that I can because I am at my computer so much. I am indoors so much. We all are. And if I'm doing that 7 days a week, it's I really do need to like get out and get some fresh air and see some sky.
yeah, for sure. And then there's the guilt factor. I feel like I'm missing out on my on my kids, on their childhood a lot of the
Yeah,
times. So same thing. And even with COVID now, obviously it's a terrible thing, but the if you want to find the positive in it, and I know that you and I have talked about this before, but it helped everybody stop for a second and take a breath.
yeah,
I mean, I was
yeah.
so busy last year. I didn't realize how like stress sick I was last year until I stopped. in March.
Yeah.
Um,
Fantastic. That's such a great term.
yeah, I was I mean, I've felt really good these past few months, and I too am trying really hard to keep some boundaries. We don't need, in my opinion, be a society that works like that. It's crazy. It's too much. So just trying to slow down and hold on to what we have had over the past few months is really important, and I hope I can do it.
Yeah. Okay, so let me know if you weren't a producer, what would you be
Oh
doing?
my god, that's so hard. There's so many. I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I don't. It's so ridiculous. So I probably would say that I would love to be a cast member on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that's so great.
Although I am
Oh my
I'm like kind of shy. So like I don't know why I think I could do it, but if I could do anything, that would probably be it.
Oh my gosh, that would terrify me. Terrify me. That is amazing. I'm so impressed.
Oh, I don't know if I could actually
Now I
do
want you to impress even more. That's fantastic. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, you've left me with two really great things. What is a Sunday and imagining you on Saturday Night
Oh my
Live.
god.
So,
Let's not imagine me on Saturday Night Live. I'd be stumbling all over myself.
well, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for being a guest today. I really appreciate it. You've provided some really fantastic insight for people who are just starting to figure out how to shoot and how to produce and talk to their clients and questions to ask. So, I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Heather. I really appreciate it, and hopefully it's valuable for somebody.
It absolutely will be. Oh my gosh, for sure.
Great.
All right. Well, have an awesome day.
Thank you.